Hi everybody, welcome to this short tutorial where we'll be discussing how to read and write a record into a file. Now, you may have done some file handling before and the focus has been on text files. So we've worked consistently with strings. But what if we want to write a record to a text file or to a file? If we write it to a text file, we have to convert all of the attributes within the record to be text, and then send that data into the file as some kind of text object. Now, if we do that, we lose, or the information loses its identity in a certain kind of way. It's no longer represented as a record. It's just represented as kind of independent strings of information. So is there a solution to that problem? Well, first of all, let me just confirm that in a programming language like Python, we can develop a class in order to create a record. So let's just create a record right now. I'm going to say S1 equals student. As you can see, the constructor method doesn't take any properties. It just sets up some default values to the class variables. But let's use some of these set methods to populate the object with some data. And s1.setRegnum, which is regnum is an integer, so let's just give it an integer. And we'll just leave the full-time status of the student as true. So we're going to create an object, we're going to give it some data, and now I want to push this data into a file. But I don't want to push individual strings into a file, I want to dump the whole record into a file. So what we're going to do today is we're going to import a utility from Python called pickle. And let me try and explain what pickle does. Let's open a file. I'm going to call it student file. And let's open that in WB mode. Now I'll explain what WB mode is in a minute. Let's also let's create a file here. Do I have a file in my project folder? No. So let's just think of a file name and let's call it students.dat. Now what is a dat file? That's a great question. A dat file is a generic data file. Okay. It can be opened with a text editor like Notepad++. Okay. But what is it? It's a generic data file that stores information specific to the application it refers to. So it doesn't have to be a string. It looks like a dat file can store any kind of data. And really, that's what a dat file does. It stores the data as a binary stream, not as text. So we're going to open a dat file for write in binary mode because we're going to be pushing binary data into this dat file. Now, let's call it student file. Now what we're going to do now is use our pickle library file here, and we're going to dump our student record, which is S1, into this dat file. And then let's close the student file. Okay, now let's see if that works. If we run this, what happens? Let's have a look. Okay, let's see if we can figure out what's going on. Capital S. It should be a capital S. Okay, let's run it again. Let's want to close that. Did you see that? There is our DAT file. It has been created. Let's see what's inside our DAT file. Oh, we can edit it with Notepad++. Okay, that's what we were told in our Google search. Oh, so it's just a bunch of gobbledygook. So this is really a representation of a binary stream. And some of it looks like, the English language, but this is an unintelligible binary stream is what we've got here, which is saved in our DAT file. We have just pickled a record and saved it in a binary data file. That's what we've just done. Now, the question is, can we unpickle the information from the file and read it back into our computer program? Well, let's have a go. I'm going to open that file again. Let's just give it a different name. I'm just going to call it S-file. We're going to open the same file for read. And we're going to tell Python that we're reading a binary file because that is a binary file. So let's open it. What's it called? Students.dat. We're going to open it, and then we are going to create a variable. Let's just call it student record. And it's going to, can I remember the syntax for this? We're going to use the pickle library file again, and we're going to this time not dump, this time we're going to load the contents of this student file. We've opened the file, now let's load the contents of that file into into memory and reference to that memory with this variable which I'm calling student record. Okay? So let's see if this unpickling of the data returns it into its object form. Can we now refer to this as an object, a student object, and also access these methods? Let's see if it's possible. Print student record dot, let's just choose one of these methods. Let's choose the getName method. We've unpickled the data and assigned the result to this student record. And now let's just see what we've got. In fact, it would be interesting to do print student record, but for now let's do print student record.getName. I'll tell you what we'll do before we do everything. Let's make sure this is empty because we're going to load it all up again. So let's just start with another empty file. Edit with Notepad++. Let's just empty it. Save it. Because we're going to do all of that again. We're going to open a file. We're going to dump a record. And then we're going to close the file. Then we'll open it again for read. And then load the data into a variable. And then let's have a look at the name. Okay, so let's just start with an empty file for this. Oh, it worked. It worked. We unpickled an object from a binary stream data file, and Pickle, this wonderful resource, has managed to unpack everything in an orderly fashion, and it's maintained its object structure. Wow. Purely out of curiosity, I've never done this before. Let's just print what we get into the student record. I bet you it's just a memory address, but let's have a go at that. I'm just going to edit this in Notepad++ and get rid of that again. Let's just start with an empty file again. because we are going to load up a record in the code. And let's run our program one more time. Ooh, so it does tell us that we have a student object at a certain address in memory. It's managed to unpickle that binary data stream and reassemble it as the correct type of object. That, guys, is an introduction to reading and writing a record to a file.